All right, here we go. Home buyers remorse. Oh no. It's spiking, especially during the pandemic. Here to explain all of this, Chase Wilsey of Wilsey Asset Management. Chase, good morning. Good to see you again.
Good morning. Good to be back
in person.
Here. Yeah.
Home buyers remorse. What is that? Because you would think that this is, oh, I'm buying my home. This is like a dream scenario, but not so for a lot of folks.
Well, I think it is a dream scenario, but I think people forget that that wanderlust. It starts to fade when you get into that house and you're like, oh, it's so great. And then 3 months, 6 months down the line, it starts to fade, and you still got that mortgage payment coming in. You have all the other expenses coming in. I mean, now I see Zillow came out with a survey that 75% of buyers during the last year, they regret buying their homes or have some form of regret.
75% of people?
75%.
That seems like an awfully high number. Is it just because they're hit by things they didn't expect when they bought a home? Because I had an experience when we bought our first home. Within 3 weeks, we had a plumbing issue.
Yeah.
And I said, oh my God, we bought the wrong house. The piping is all messed up. We didn't do our homework, blah, blah, blah. It felt horrible.
Yeah, and that number is high too because it's some form of regret. It's not like, oh my gosh, I really wish I never did. There's just some form of regret in that 75%. I mean, the biggest one was 40% of people, kind of as you said, too much maintenance. And I think that stems from unexpected problems. And also too, I think, unfortunately, everybody thinks they're like Chip and Joanna Gaines now, and they think they can go on and fix up these homes. And it takes a lot of work to buy that fixer-upper. Talk about 30% of people at hidden costs. I mean, that talks, I think, a lot about the property taxes, the insurance. It's not just the mortgage when you move in. There's a lot more other costs you have to analyze.
But in the process of buying a home, when you say hidden costs, isn't that something that you talk about and you discuss? It's like, look, with your real estate agent or whoever, it's like, there's this, there's HOA, there's mortgage, there's taxes, there's your water bills, et cetera, et cetera.
I think that is something, but I think it's something that goes in one ear and out the other, where you're just so kind of mesmerized by the home buying process, you forget to really take a look at the numbers and analyze different things. So that's a big part of it.
Is there a big change, like almost like a culture shock, going from an apartment where you're renting, where if there's a problem, you make a phone call, they fix it? Versus now it's on you.
Well, exactly. I mean, you have landscaping that you got to do. You got to hire somebody to do it, or you got to do it yourself. And it's like, gosh, mowing the grass, you know, trimming the trees. It takes a lot of work. Where before in an apartment, it's a lot different there.
I tried cutting my own grass. I bought one of those manual lawnmowers, the one that, you know, like
looks like fun.
that lasted all about 1 week, Chase. 1 week. Okay, let's get to that 30% here. 32% that the home size, the size of the home itself. Wait a minute.
Yeah, and I think this is kind of the pressure that you see. Is everybody else is buying homes, and it's like, well, I'm going to buy a house, and you kind of push yourself into the smaller house. It lacks features that you really wanted. This one is the one that cracks me up. 26% of people say the interest rate is too high. And I'm like, you got to go back in history. Some people used to pay 18% for a 30-year mortgage, not the 3, even 4% that we're seeing today. And then lastly, too, this one really gets me, is the bad location. People need to understand where they're buying their homes. But sometimes people are buying it and they don't even go see it before they buy it. I mean, sight on seeing it. It's just, that's a crazy thing to do, in my opinion.
I think a lot of people get blinded by the excitement of it, kind of like a romance, if you will. They're blinded by it and they don't see what's right in front of them. Like location, location, location is the rule of real estate, right? So to have that be one of the reasons you have remorse?
Yeah, and that's the issue, is I think people go look at that house. I mean, one of my big keys here to avoid that remorse is go spend time in that place. And also, too, a lot of people bought homes during COVID when they weren't going into work. They have no idea what the commute was like, and now they're driving to work every day. And it's like, gosh, I'm driving an hour, and they hate that. So that's one thing that I'm saying, really be cautious of before you buy that house.
We mentioned the hidden costs. Give me a few more examples of that, because just in case we're helping people now, maybe they're in the process. What are some of those that maybe people aren't thinking about?
One of the big ones I talk about is the opportunity cost. So you have that down payment, it goes into the house. What could that money be doing outside of the down payment in the home? And the big thing I tell people too is home prices, they don't always go up. Sometimes they do go down. And I have an example here where if you buy $1 million home, you put 20% down on that home. Well, that's a $200,000 down payment. If that house declines by 10%, very real possibility. People are, oh, no way. It can happen. That's a loss of $100,000. Now you're forced to sell the home. 5% commission to the realtor, that's $45,000, plus you had $12,000 commission. You have now lost over $150,000 on that initial investment. That is something that's very scary, not to mention if that money was invested somewhere else and it could have done better. So that's a big area of caution. That, remember, houses don't always go up.
Math is always the scary truth teller, isn't it? It's like when you actually break it down into numbers, like, oh, I don't like that. There are some things that we can do perhaps to avoid this home buyer's remorse. What can folks do?
Yeah, so I talked about a couple of them already, but one of the big things is, hey, make sure, please do not waive the appraisal or waive the inspection.
Yep.
That is where you can get into huge trouble, because I've heard of people, they get in and the foundation is messed up. That's a very costly expense. Talk about hidden expenses.
Right.
Well, you got to redo the whole foundation. That is a disaster. The other thing I always tell people, be patient. I think there's a lot of pressure on people right now. They've looked at homes, they've gotten out bid, so then they get into these bidding wars and they feel, oh my gosh, that pressure to get it, that next one. But remember, 2-3 years down the line, I'm sure there's going to be plenty of homes out there that you're going to like. Don't just be fixated on, I have to buy a home right now.
That's great advice, because it's easy to get excited. We all get excited. Talk to people who've gone through it before.
Talk to people who've gone through it, and remember, renting is not a bad option because you're not locked in. You don't have a lot of the costs associated with the homes. If it takes 1, 2, 3 years to rent and find that opportunity in a home, that's a lot more advantageous. And I don't see home prices appreciating like they have during COVID. I don't think you're going to miss out on a 17% spike in home prices this next year.
All right, Chase Wilsey, great advice. We appreciate the time and good seeing you here again.
Good to see you too.
All right, bud.